My sister told me the family trip was postponed. But then I saw the airport selfies without me. So I waited until they landed and left them a surprise that had everyone calling me within minutes. I, 29M, stared at my phone screen in disbelief, watching my sister's Instagram story update in real time. There they were, my entire family beaming at the camera with their luggage at the gate, boarding passes in hand. The caption read, "Family vacation, here we come," with a bunch of airplane and beach emojis. The same family vacation that my sister had called me about just 2 days ago to tell me was postponed indefinitely due to Dad's work emergency. My thumb trembled slightly as I scrolled through the photos. Mom adjusting her sun hat, Dad holding his coffee with that excited smile he gets before trips, my sister making her usual duck face, and my younger brother already wearing his vacation shirt. Everyone was there except me. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. They hadn't postponed anything. They'd deliberately excluded me. I sat there in my apartment, surrounded by the work I'd rearranged specifically because I thought our Bahamas trip was off. I'd turned down a weekend with friends, canceled a date, and even called in sick today, thinking I'd be packing instead of working. All because my sister had sounded so convincing when she told me about Dad's supposed crisis at the office. My mind raced back to recent family gatherings, searching for signs I'd missed. Had there been whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms? Side glances I dismissed as paranoia? The more I thought about it, the more pieces started falling into place. 3 weeks ago at Mom's birthday dinner, conversation had felt stilted whenever I joined their circle. Last month's barbecue had the same weird energy. I'd chalked it up to family dynamics, but now I realized they'd probably been planning this trip right under my nose. The betrayal cut deeper than any breakup I'd experienced. This wasn't some acquaintance or coworker. This was my family. People who were supposed to have my back no matter what. I called my sister immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Airplane mode, obviously. Then I tried my parents. Same thing. Even my brother's phone was off. They were probably already in the air, laughing about how they'd managed to ditch me without any confrontation. But why? That's what ate at me the most. What had I done to deserve this level of deception and exclusion? Sure, we'd had our disagreements over the years, but nothing that warranted being cut out of a family vacation we'd been planning for months. Then it hit me. The inheritance. 2 months ago, our grandmother had passed away and left her house to me in her will. Not split between all the grandchildren like everyone expected, but specifically to me. She'd always said I reminded her of my grandfather, and apparently she'd meant it literally when it came to her final wishes. The house was worth nearly $500,000, sitting on prime real estate in the old part of town. My family had been less than thrilled about the decision. There'd been awkward conversations about fairness and what grandmother really would have wanted if she'd been thinking clearly. I'd offered to discuss selling it and splitting the proceeds, but the lawyer had advised against making any hasty decisions. Maybe my family saw this as me being greedy or selfish, choosing money over family bonds. But still, lying to me about a vacation? Making me believe Dad was having work troubles? That was a level of cruel I never expected from people who'd raised me. I spent the next hour pacing my apartment, anger building with each step. They thought they could just exclude me, and I'd what? Never find out? Never see the photos they'd inevitably post? Did they think I was that naive? By evening, I'd made my decision. If they wanted to play games, I could play games too. But I needed to be strategic about this. Rushing into some half-baked revenge plot would only make me look like the bad guy they apparently already thought I was. I started by checking their flight details. My sister's Instagram story had helpfully included a shot of their boarding passes, and with a little zooming, I could make out their flight number. A quick online check showed they'd be landing back home Sunday evening, 3 days from now. That gave me plenty of time to plan. Update 1. The next morning, I called my office and used some of my accumulated sick days to take the rest of the week off. My boss wasn't thrilled, but I'd been working overtime for months without complaint, so he couldn't really argue. My first stop was grandmother's house, my house now, technically. I hadn't done much with it since inheriting it, mostly just basic maintenance and security checks. It was a beautiful old Victorian with a wraparound porch and original hardwood floors throughout. Grandmother had kept it immaculate, and walking through it always made me feel close to her memory. But today, I was seeing it with different eyes. This house was apparently worth destroying family relationships over, worth lying and scheming and excluding people over. If that's how my family wanted to play it, then maybe it was time they understood exactly what they'd given up. I spent the day researching real estate agents and property management companies. By afternoon, I had 3 different agents coming by for consultations about listing the house for sale. Not because I necessarily wanted to sell it, but because I wanted documentation of its value and market interest. The agents were impressed. One woman told me I could easily get asking price within a month, maybe more if we timed it right with the spring market. Another suggested I could rent it out for premium rates given its location and condition. But the third agent gave me an idea that was absolutely perfect. She mentioned that the house would be ideal for short-term vacation rentals. The location was perfect for tourists wanting to experience the historic district, and the vintage charm would photograph beautifully for rental listings. With some minor updates and professional staging, I could charge premium nightly rates and probably book solid through the peak seasons. That's when the perfect revenge scenario crystallized in my mind. I spent Saturday preparing everything. First, I hired a professional photographer to come document the house from every angle. Not for revenge purposes. I genuinely wanted good photos for my own records, but the timing would work perfectly for what I had planned. Next, I contacted a cleaning service to give the house a thorough deep clean. Again, something I'd been meaning to do anyway, but the timing was deliberately strategic. Finally, I drove to the office supply store and purchased a stack of official-looking legal folders and some high-quality paper for printing documents. Sunday evening couldn't come fast enough. Update 2. I positioned myself at the coffee shop across from the airport arrivals area Sunday night, laptop open, watching the flight tracker. Their plane had landed 20 minutes ago, which meant they'd be getting their luggage and heading to the parking garage soon. My phone sat silent on the table beside me. No messages, no missed calls. They were probably hoping to slip back into town without me noticing their return. Then tomorrow or next week, they'd start posting vacation photos and act like nothing had happened. My laptop screen displayed the email I'd spent all afternoon crafting. The subject line read, "Important family meeting required. Legal documentation attached." I'd CC'd all of them, plus my uncle who served as the unofficial family mediator for serious situations. The email was professional, direct, and absolutely devastating. I explained that I discovered their deception about the vacation through social media, and that their decision to exclude me while lying about the reasons had fundamentally changed my perspective on our family dynamics. I mentioned that I'd spent considerable time over the weekend consulting with legal and financial advisors about my inheritance situation, given what appeared to be ongoing family tension about grandmother's wishes. Then came the knockout punch. I'd attached professional photos of grandmother's house along with 3 different market analyses showing its current value and rental potential. The documents made it crystal clear that I had options they probably hadn't considered, and that their behavior had motivated me to explore those options seriously. But the real surprise was the final attachment. A signed agreement with a property management company to convert the house into a luxury short-term rental, with a start date of the following month. The projected annual income was substantial, and the contract included provisions for renovating and updating the property to maximize its rental appeal. I made it clear that this wasn't a bluff or negotiation tactic. I'd already put money down and signed contracts. Their deception had convinced me that keeping the house as a family gathering place wasn't viable anymore, so I was moving forward with commercializing it instead. The last paragraph was the most carefully crafted part. I wrote that I hoped their vacation had been everything they'd wanted it to be, since it had helped me gain clarity about my own priorities and future plans. I mentioned that I'd be happy to discuss my decisions with anyone who wanted to have an honest conversation about our family dynamics, but that I wouldn't be responding to any complaints about choices I'd made while they were off enjoying their secret getaway. I hit send at exactly 8:47 p.m., right when I calculated they'd be walking through their front doors and checking their phones for the first time since landing. Then I drove home and waited. Update 3. My phone started ringing at 9:23 p.m. My sister's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad called. Then Mom. Then my brother. I ignored them all. The voicemails started stacking up immediately. My sister's voice was panicked, asking me to call her back urgently. Dad sounded angry, demanding I explain what this rental contract nonsense was about. Mom's message was hurt and confused, saying she didn't understand why I was being so drastic over a simple misunderstanding. But it was my brother's voicemail that almost made me answer. He sounded genuinely upset, saying he didn't know about any plan to exclude me and that he'd thought I'd canceled on the trip myself. His message felt different from the others, less defensive, more confused. Still, I didn't call back. They'd had 3 days to come clean, and instead they'd doubled down on their deception. Now they could stew in the consequences for a while. The text messages were even more revealing. My sister sent a string of increasingly frantic texts explaining that the vacation exclusion had been Mom's idea, that she'd just gone along with it to avoid family drama. She swore she'd tried to talk Mom out of it, but hadn't wanted to cause a scene. Dad's texts were more direct. He demanded I call him immediately to discuss this rental situation like adults. He said I was being childish and that converting grandmother's house into a commercial property was disrespectful to her memory. That text almost made me laugh out loud. Disrespectful to her memory? What did he think lying to her favorite grandchild and excluding him from family gatherings was? Mom's messages were the most manipulative. She started with guilt, saying she'd never imagined I'd react so extremely to a simple change of vacation plans. Then she moved to bargaining, suggesting we could plan another trip that included everyone. Finally, she got to the real issue, demanding to know if the rental contract was real and whether I was actually planning to turn grandmother's house into a business. I waited until Monday morning to respond, and only with a single message sent to the family group chat. I'm available for individual conversations this week if anyone wants to discuss our family situation honestly. The rental contract is real and binding. I hope everyone enjoyed their vacation. Update 4. My brother called Tuesday morning. Unlike the others, he started by apologizing. He explained that he genuinely believed I'd backed out of the trip at the last minute due to work obligations. Mom had told him I'd called her directly to cancel, and he hadn't thought to verify that with me. He seemed genuinely shocked when I explained about my sister's call claiming the trip was postponed due to Dad's work emergency. He asked me to send him screenshots of our text conversation, and when I did, he was quiet for a long moment before telling me how sorry he was. According to my brother, the vacation exclusion had been planned for weeks. Mom had convinced Dad and my sister that I'd been acting entitled about the inheritance and that I needed some space to gain perspective about family priorities. She'd argued that a family trip without me might help everyone process their feelings about grandmother's will without the awkwardness of my presence. My sister had volunteered to be the one to lie to me about cancellation because she thought it would be kinder than telling me I wasn't invited. In her mind, she was protecting my feelings while giving the family space to work through their resentment. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd excluded me to avoid awkwardness about the inheritance, but their deception had pushed me to actually do something dramatic with the property. My brother asked if the rental conversion was really happening or if it was an elaborate bluff to make a point. When I told him it was completely real, that I'd already signed contracts and put down deposits, he was stunned into silence. He begged me to reconsider, saying that grandmother's house had been the center of family gatherings for decades and that losing it would devastate Mom. But I reminded him that they'd been willing to exclude me from family gatherings entirely, so clearly the house's role as a family center wasn't as sacred as he wanted to believe. Wednesday brought a call from Dad. He skipped apologies entirely and went straight into lecture mode about family loyalty and forgiveness. He tried to frame their deception as a minor misunderstanding that I was blowing out of proportion with dramatic overreactions. I let him talk for several minutes before asking him a simple question. If the situation was reversed, and I had lied to him about a family emergency to exclude him from a vacation he'd been planning and looking forward to, how would he have reacted? The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds before he admitted he would have been furious. But then he immediately tried to justify their actions by bringing up the inheritance again, saying my attitude about grandmother's house had been causing family tension for weeks. I asked him to specify exactly what attitude I'd displayed. Had I been bragging about the inheritance? Rubbing it in anyone's face? Making demands or threats? When he couldn't give me concrete examples, I pointed out that their resentment about grandmother's decision wasn't my fault, and that punishing me for her choices was fundamentally unfair. The conversation ended with him asking me to postpone the rental conversion until we could have a family meeting to work through everything. I told him I'd consider it if everyone was willing to acknowledge that their deception was wrong and apologize genuinely, not just because they disliked the consequences. Update 5. Thursday evening, my sister showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked exhausted and had clearly been crying recently. She asked if we could talk, and despite everything, I let her in. She started by taking full responsibility for the lie about Dad's work emergency. She admitted that she'd volunteered to make the call because she thought it would be easier than having a confrontation about the real reasons for my exclusion. She said she'd convinced herself that she was being kind by sparing my feelings, but she realized now that the deception was cruel regardless of her intentions. Then she broke down completely. She told me that she'd been struggling with jealousy about the inheritance for weeks, not because she wanted grandmother's house specifically, but because it felt like proof that I'd always been the favorite grandchild. She'd spent years feeling like she could never measure up to the relationship I'd had with grandmother, and the inheritance had brought all those insecurities to the surface. She said that when Mom suggested the family needed space to process their feelings about the will, it had seemed like a reasonable solution. Everyone could have a relaxing vacation without the awkward tension, and then they'd come back ready to handle the inheritance situation more maturely. But seeing my email with the rental conversion documents had made her realize how badly they'd miscalculated. She'd never imagined I'd react by actually changing my plans for the house, and the possibility of losing it as a family gathering place had shaken her more than she'd expected. She begged me to reconsider the rental conversion, offering to help mediate conversations with Mom and Dad about the inheritance situation. She promised that she'd take full responsibility for the vacation deception and make sure everyone understood that their resentment about grandmother's will wasn't justification for excluding me from family events. Her apology felt genuine, but I wasn't ready to make any immediate decisions about the house. I told her I needed time to think about everything, and that my trust in the family had been seriously damaged by their willingness to lie to me so elaborately. Friday morning brought the call I'd been expecting from Mom, but instead of anger or manipulation, she sounded defeated. She started by admitting that the vacation exclusion had been her idea and that she'd convinced the others to go along with it. She explained that she'd been struggling with grandmother's decision to leave the entire house to me instead of splitting it among all the grandchildren. She felt like it was unfair to my siblings and cousins, and she'd been hoping that some family time without me might help everyone process their disappointment without taking it out on me directly. But she acknowledged that lying about the reasons for excluding me had been wrong, regardless of her motivations. She said she'd been trying to avoid a direct confrontation about the inheritance because she didn't want to seem greedy or manipulative, but she realized that the deception had been far more hurtful than honesty would have been. She asked if there was any way to undo the rental conversion, saying she understood why I'd made that decision, but hoping it wasn't too late to change course. When I explained that I'd signed binding contracts and put down non-refundable deposits, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked what it would take for me to forgive the family and consider rebuilding our relationships. I told her that forgiveness would take time, but that I needed to see genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing from everyone involved, not just apologies motivated by wanting to change my decision about the house. Final update. It's been 2 weeks since the vacation revelation, and the family dynamics are still settling into a new pattern. The rental conversion is moving forward as planned. The contracts are binding, and honestly, I've started to get excited about the project. The house will be beautifully maintained and appreciated by visitors, which feels like a better tribute to grandmother's memory than letting it sit mostly empty while family members harbor resentment about who inherited it. My brother and I have rebuilt our relationship completely. His apology was immediate and genuine, and he's been actively working to repair the broader family situation. We've started having regular one-on-one conversations about family dynamics, and he's been honest about times when he felt caught in the middle between different family members' perspectives. My sister is trying, but rebuilding trust is taking longer. She's acknowledged her role in the deception multiple times, and she's been working to address her own feelings about the inheritance situation. We've had several productive conversations, but I can tell she's still processing her emotions about grandmother's decision and her own family relationships. Dad has been the slowest to come around. He's apologized for the vacation exclusion, but he's still struggling with what he sees as my overreaction to their deception. He keeps suggesting that I should have been more understanding of their feelings about the inheritance instead of jumping straight to such a drastic response. We're working on it, but it's going to take time for him to understand that their lie was a bigger betrayal than he wants to admit. Mom has surprised me the most. After her initial defensiveness, she's been genuinely reflective about the situation. She's acknowledged that her discomfort with grandmother's decision doesn't justify how they treated me, and she's been working to understand why I felt so betrayed by their deception. She's even started helping with some of the renovation planning for the house, saying she wants to make sure it honors grandmother's memory appropriately. The rental conversion has actually brought some unexpected benefits. The renovation process has given us natural opportunities to spend time together and work toward a common goal. Mom and my sister have both contributed ideas for preserving grandmother's favorite features while updating the house for modern guests. More importantly, converting the house to a rental has removed it as a source of ongoing family tension. Instead of sitting there as a reminder of inheritance disputes, it's becoming something productive that benefits everyone indirectly. The income will help me build financial security, but I've also set aside a portion to contribute to family gatherings and events. The vacation situation taught me something important about family dynamics and communication. Their willingness to lie to me revealed deeper issues about how they processed conflict and disappointment. But my reaction also showed them that I wasn't going to accept being excluded or deceived, even by people I love. We're planning a proper family vacation for next summer, one that actually includes everyone from the beginning. The conversation about planning it was awkward at first, but we managed to have honest discussions about expectations and communication. Everyone seems committed to being more direct about their feelings instead of resorting to deception or exclusion. I still get angry sometimes when I think about those Instagram photos and the elaborate lie they told me. But I'm also grateful that the situation forced us to address underlying family issues that might have festered for years otherwise. Their deception hurt, but my response showed all of us that actions have consequences, even within families. The house renovation should be finished next month, and the first guests are booked for the spring season. I'm genuinely excited about sharing grandmother's beautiful home with people who will appreciate it, while also building something positive from a painful family situation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at people who hurt you. It's building something better from the pieces they tried to break.